Hello, Culture Matters podcast. Boy, am I excited for this episode. Before I introduce our guest, here's a quote just for this episode. We're not fighting against evil. We're fighting to be good. Christine Beckwith. I have a book right in front of me. It's called Finding Honor, The Journey to the Truth by Christine Beckwith, our guest today for chapter 10, which is Forgiving Your Killers. Here's an intro, just real quick. Some excerpt from page 79. What caused me to see the bullshit was a break in a deep friendship. A friend who had grown greedy robbed me of resources, shook the foundation of my loyalty, and allowed me to wake up and see the church I prayed to was a mirage. Wow. This book is just one after another after another. Christine, thanks for coming back to the podcast.
Thank
And
you.
God, I gotta know. Um, First of all, how did you learn to write like this?
I don't know. I've always been a flowery writer, as my editor will say. I'm flowery. It's not, look, if you look at my writing, whether in books or anywhere, social media, you're going to see me have like sentences with 5 adjectives before a noun. I just think even as a kid, I had a way of saying things. And so I've tried to expand my vocabulary because I find that the way that you cut through the paper into the mind of the reader is in how they hear the sentiment of what you're saying. And the bigger your vocabulary becomes, I mean, God, you say things sometimes I'm running to my Google, or Wikipedia to figure out what you're saying to me. And I love it because then I learn a new word. But
Mm,
yeah, I'm just trying. I feel like the more honest you get, the more easy it is to express real sentiment.
really?
I guess that's
That makes
probably
sense.
it. Yeah, because the statement you just said, which even, is surprising to me to hear out loud on a podcast, that I said it and wrote it in a book that's now public, is because I held such hatred inside me during an intersection in my career towards the falling down of a very deep business relationship. And we know that hate is not an acceptable form of expression. And as a result of that, you have shame when you feel hate, even if you feel justified, or if you're unself-aware and you haven't been born again in this area, you might be spewing it everywhere onto people. And so I was living
Mm,
in a world that demanded PC. So the spewing wasn't occurring. I was living with it. And to work towards fixing the emotional trauma of it and then get to a place where I could talk about the story of it in a educational way is a really wonderful thing to be here now.
if I continue, it says after the mirage, in the end, this person did me an enormous favor. I am at peace with this individual today, beyond the hate and the emotional tsunami I lived with for many years. I let it all go when I crossed the bridge to the truth. What is the bridge to the truth?
Yeah, it kind of goes back to the beginning of the book where I talk about how I was born again after sitting in the lecture that you did. And I know you didn't ask me this question because you thought I'd answer it this way, but it's the truth. Um, Watching you lecture on the liar lid, which is a psychological uh talk. It's a psychological theory on people's layers of lying that they do to themselves and others. Um, I realized, as I say in the beginning of the book, that I drove away that night like I'm a liar. And not because I didn't, to that point in my life, work every day towards the good or betterment of myself or others, but because there were fundamental lies that I continued to tell myself. And there were times when I held back from being honest with others because I didn't want to hurt people's feelings, or I didn't want to look a certain way, or I wanted to fit in, because telling the truth is not popular, I've discovered.
Hmm.
And interestingly, I think it was it's helped me in so many ways. It helped me begin to walk a path where I began to question, is that the truth? Is that the truth? Is that the truth? Every single day when I would speak. I still today, and I feel like I was born again a decade ago, right? Around that time frame, I now find myself, because I said I have a liar quiz, which we've gone over, and it talks about
Yeah.
embellishing stories and all this stuff. So I just hold myself every single day to that regard. I will catch myself. I disdain lying so much so that even a white lie that might be, not hurtful to anybody, but just something you're going to say to kind of avoid a conflict or something, I can't do it. I won't do it. And if I'm forced to do it to go along with something, I will ask for forgiveness in my head for it.
Mm.
So I'm very, very self-aware. So I think the path I talk about to the truth is really a person who journeys from the place where they're unself-aware, whether they're completely honest, to a place where they become fully aware that they're honest.
Mm. What about forgiving one's killers? Why? Why bother?
Yeah, like, we all know if we have any form of modern religion, whether it's Christianity, Buddhism, even Catholicism, that forgiveness has been written about in depth in the Bible. God forgave sinners, and it was kind of, obviously it's a sentiment that every human is worthy of love and every human is worthy of forgiveness. But when you get into professional development, you're going to have counseling, and modern psychology is going to tell you that when we hold on to hate, there's damage that's done to us internally. And so in my book and in this chapter, Forgiving Your Killers, I begin to talk about the point where you help me in our counsel, if you will, really see myself as a person that was carrying hate, which I was unself-aware of in the beginning of the journey. And I didn't know I was a hater. I didn't know I was carrying revengeful actions. I didn't know that I had hate in my heart. I just was justified in defending bad things that had been done to me. And so when I got to the point where I realized, like, oh wow, like life's always gonna, offer up these types of people in and around us, and some will be more severe than others. And even though the story I tell is a severe instance of one of betrayal in my mind, I didn't think I could get to the point where I could forgive that person, because I could only look at the person for the wrongdoing. And so the chapter tells you, what if you were forced to look at a person who has done wrong to you and try to find 3 to 5 things about them that were honorable? Could you do it? And that was essentially what changed my look back at this individual, because there were honorable things about this person. And I can say wholeheartedly, sitting here today, this man has done honorable work. This man has worked hard. This man has probably shouldered his own sacrifice amongst people that I also shouldered sacrifice with. There were dishonorable things he did. There was characteristical plagues that he has that I don't know today if he's overcome or not, because I'm not close enough to him to know if he has. But I do feel good about the fact that I became honest in time before I exited this person's life to honestly tell him his lacking, to be a person that consultatively said, you should know that you do this, this, and this, and you act this, and this way, and this is the cause and effect of those actions. And then I left, and I said, and I can no longer live here because of it. And then I left. And I do think I probably brought that person who did care about me and did, I think, value my opinion to a degree. I probably did help him evolve, I'm guessing. And so it does lend to the idea that when we're honest, we're going to be helpful. And so I'm brutally honest today, and I still live in that place. As far as forgiving, I did forgive him. I did reach a place where I could forgive him. And interestingly, through circumstance, this person and I would end up in each other's physical locale in a situation outside this country, which is so odd. And after days of, spherical proximity, I would venture upon an opportunity where we would be able to say the words to one another that we would let go and move forward. And that we kind of explained our position again, and acceptance of what occurred, and a willingness and a desire for it to be better than we left it. And so that didn't come with and I say in the book, I don't let my enemies back at my table. Once you're disloyal to me, unfortunately in my world, I accept that you've shown your cards. Do I think people can't evolve? No, I think people can evolve. I think people can change. I don't set off on a mission. I don't have some nostalgic desire to bring every bad player in my life back to my table and believe that they're, cured of whatever bad doing they used to do. Instead, I wish them well, and I secretly find myself happy to think that I have thoughts integral about these people today, and I'm not sitting in hate anymore. And that has lent me incredible psychological freedom. It's made me love myself more, because I feel like I'm a creature that has greater characteristical beliefs. When you look at and I don't want to name modern day people, but for lack of any other type of explanation, if you look at nuns, or you look at pastors or priests, or you look at people that dedicate themselves to a life of mentorship or whatever, I even draw upon my own. I have two great aunts that are no longer with me, but one of them never married, and she was a librarian, and she served in the town. I mean, my God, she was literally, I forget the word, when you're the person in the parade that they put in the car and they honor you, the whole town honors you, but she was that person one year. And she just lived this honorable life. She committed herself to the community and giving to others. And I really looked up at that as a young girl growing up, and I recognized it too as something extremely honorable. Her sister was a married woman with a child, and obviously grew old in my purview, and also was dedicated to community and community action and volunteerism. And so, I've always had that in me. But getting rid of hate has allowed more space for me to do more good. I just donated money this last month in a scholarship in the memory of a fallen, murdered young woman who died at 19 years old, who's the niece of one of a woman in our industry who I awarded my Clear Boundaries scholarship to, which is based on my book about my two girlfriends that were murdered, and a safety book. And anyways, this money I donated is helping 12 teenage foster girls go get education to get their licenses and pay for the actual purchasing of their licenses. Or there were 20 girls, and they had 8 that had sponsors. And I learned about this cause, and I thought, I can afford to help these 12 women, young girls, go get their, licenses, which, getting their license obviously sets them on a course for a lot of other things, like being able to go to school and being able to, get jobs and things like that. So, if I lived in hate consumed time for me. When I lived in hate, it consumed white space of thinking. In my peripheral of work, I would find myself laying in bed, churning through the hatred of my mind. And so when you do get to a place where you're forgiving and you're able to overcome that, it gives you a lot. It has a lot of ROI.
You think actually in business?
I do. I see a lot of time being spent as we sit here right now from people that are hating on each other's business silo,
It's interesting.
or hating on each other's type of business, hating on their business decisions, hating on who they're aligned with, hating on their mission. And I just don't see that. I have every reason to dislike. I want to tell you also, I'm talking about a past experience where I cure a hate I had in the past life. Let me tell you how this has shaped me in my relationships in the present. I have people that do me wrong, I have people that have done me really wrong in the last couple of years. People that asked me to give of myself, and then when it no longer suited them, moved on to do something and kind of left me behind. And it's natural to feel like, hey, wait a minute, I took this sacrifice for you. I stood by you. Where are you now when I need you? And it has shaped my ability not to enter into hate. So, like at the beginning of the thought process where you start to think about hate, I catch myself there. And I say, don't hate Christine.
Wow.
Like, look at this person right now. What are they doing? They're not going to get this other job or leaving your consulting firm because they don't like you. They're making a personal pivot in their life. And it's where their road is parting, more or less. And is this really personal? Is their act of omission against you from a malice place, which is easy to tell yourself it is when it isn't. And so I've been able to really not get on a course where I am losing and I'm distracting. And so I feel grateful that I have this awareness today,
Wow.
to get in front of it and not, because it makes me way more productive, by the way.
That was where my next question was going to be about productivity.
Mm-hmm.
How much more productive, do you think someone is when they're not? I'm asking because it makes me think that the person that's focused on those emotions,
Yeah.
we're closed off from other relationships
Right.
at some level. How can that affect proactivity? Like, how do I have a tough conversation with a new relationship when I'm stuck
Yeah.
on tough conversations of old relationships that may or may not have been had? I'm curious what you think.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I want to tell you that I use this metaphor or analogy rather. I always say to people, what is your, when you have GPS up on your phone, and I'm not going to name any labels of it, but there's a recenter button in the lower left corner. Like if you end up like expanding the map of where you're going and you get ahead of yourself, you're like, where's this road turning? The map gets skewed. And then if you want to go back to where you are, right where you are this second, like satellite GPS second, you hit the recenter button and boom, you're standing in the spot you're standing in. And now you can clearly see where you are. Well, I think in life, we have to have a recenter button. We have to have a hard reset button for ourselves. We can get off path with these unproductive thoughts, people from our past, people from our future. I mean, there are, God, so much distraction every single day. I've been aware when I've had an employee here that's been toxic, and I have seen what it does to me in distracting me from thinking. Because here's what happens when somebody does something to you that is unintegral or causes you to hate them. The act itself is usually quick, whatever it is. A person cheats on you in a relationship. Well, and it happened in a night. So there's the act. You find out about it in the morning. I'm not talking about myself right now, but other people that I counsel or whatever. It isn't the time it took to do the act. It's everything that's lost from that point forward. Because the time and the energy and the emotion and all of the stuff that's spent. Harvard University has a really famous study that I talk about when I do lectures. And they had a graduating MBA class that capsulated what their value would be in 20 years. And then the 20-year class would pull out that old class's capsulized goals and look at them, and they would see if they actually earned the wealth that they did. And some of the study, 13% of the people participated. It was a voluntary study, but 80% of the class's wealth was made up from that 13% of the people. And when they studied why the people were more successful than the people that didn't write goals, and obviously it lent to goal writing, it obviously lends to that, setting some sort of stake that you're working towards. They got into layers of discovery on distraction. This was really interesting. They pulled the people that weren't, that didn't do the task, the voluntary task of setting their goals. They said, did you have death and, illness and financial disruption? Did you get divorced? Did you have things that caused you financial disruption and distraction. And then they went and they asked the people that hit their financial goals, that were millionaires, this 13% that set their goals, that did phenomenal. And you know what? By percentages, both groups had the same amount of death, illness, divorce, and financial distraction. You know what made the group wealthier than the other group? Their recovery time. Because they had a goal in place, they wanted to pick themselves up faster because they needed to march towards that goal. They knew they were going to get measured. They knew that study was going to be public. They knew they were showing up to get weighed, if you would, in life. And so they said, there isn't time. It's the guy that's on Weight Watchers and he cheats today and eats cake. And he wakes up tomorrow and says, gee, I got to get back on track because I'm getting weighed in 10 days. And when you put intersections in your life, so I think it has the same philosophy
Wow, that's
in
profound.
actuality. Right.
I can attest. I've lived that myself. I can attest to that.
Yeah.
Like having a fall, right? And not like being so attached to the calamity that one is unable to create themselves again. Like, man, that makes a hell of a lot of sense.
Yeah. And I use it in business because I say to you, you know, in my blueprint lecture, it isn't if you're going to have a fire today, it's when. And it isn't who knows how to firefight, because we all do. It's whether or not you dwell on the fire after the fire is put out that's going to cost you your production today. And so people that are, let's just say, top producers are used to seeing more fires more frequently. Naturally, the more frequent you get at firefighting, the better you get at solving a problem and going back to it, and solving a problem and going back to it, and going back to productive things. I'm very self-aware when I'm going downhill. The other day, I had a terrible thing happen at 5 p.m. And I want to tell you, I had the most glorious day that day. So productive, so happy, so everything positive. It was like a 10 out of a 10 day. And then in a second, the thing went like in the shitter. And what was funny is, you know what my revelation was? I'm so glad this happened at 5. It didn't rob me 1 minute of my productivity today. And I can sulk now tonight about this negative thing, and it's not taking away from me. I was aware. And I let myself feel, and in a normal day, if it had happened at 9 a.m., what would have happened is I would have been in a battle with myself emotionally. Sometimes when things hit me really hard, I do take a minute and give myself grace to step away and breathe through the emotion. Like that might be complete separation from the work that I'm doing, and just 30 minutes of like no phone, no computer, no TV, and just sitting there. And maybe I have to cry it out. Maybe I have to scream it out. Maybe I have to talk to somebody. Maybe I just need to let it go and into the universe. Maybe I have to think it through, like what just happened. What is the repercussion of what just happened? I'm going to be okay. Everything's going to be okay. Like, you know, we're going to get over this. What's the counterintuitive action that I can do? If I lost money, so I'm going to tell you, I'm a faster to selling person. If I lose $10,000 today, I'm on a mission today to find $10,000. And when you become wired in that way, and I've always known this about myself, by the way, and I haven't always been great at this, I would eventually get back to selling, because I'm a person that when I get knocked down and get the wind knocked out of me, you need to leave the arena. Because if I'm going to get back up, when I catch my breath, I am going to be like hell on wheels. Like I have that type, and I've been able to go from a life where I destroyed myself and I destroyed others, and I caused destruction and disruption and regrettable actions over anger, to a person that can take that fuel, because it is a fuel, and funnel it into like productive activity in a way where I will blow the next greatest thing in my business up using the ether effects of the anger. And so forgiving your killers, in summary, in my mind, is my admission of not handling myself to the most effective manner. At the end of the day, Finding Iron of the Journey to the Truth is the ultimate business book. It says it on the back cover. If you want ultimate happiness and success, then you need to figure out what the journey is to getting there. But here's the really big thing you have to understand. People are chasing money and success in this order. That first, and then they think it'll bring them happiness. This book is telling you that happiness is the precursor to success. When we wake up and we are effectively managing our bodies, mind, body, soul, which I talk about in the book, and we're minding to what we're bringing in to our mindset, and we're feeding our mindset positive things, and we're writing, reading, and speaking as you've taught me, and I am a practicing person doing and teaching others and paying those lessons forward. If we become the people who seek health and happiness first, guess what happens to your money and your success? Well, you are able to tolerate a lot more crap because you're happy at the core and you're successful in your mind at your core. You know, my enemy can come to me today, and I'm going to tell you something, 10 or 20 years ago, they could bring me money to my knees and keep me there. And I'm not saying I haven't had things happen. I mean, I've talked a lot during this podcast of this book about my sister and dealing with grief. That was an enemy that came and kept me at my knees this last year and still brings me to my knees when I allow myself to really think about her. And, you know, it's an enemy I have to learn to live with and overcome and move through. And I'm on a journey of progress with that. But I'm talking about normal things. How many of us have given more power to our enemy than they deserve? How many of us have made an antagonist in our story more powerful than they need to be? I've given power to people that don't deserve to have it, and made them more important in my story than they are because of a desire or an addiction to be in a relationship with anger. Some people are addicted to that emotion, by the way, that drama. It feels like the same thing that we get, you know, when we're having dopamine and, you know, that sort of thing, anger and the negative feelings, the fight or flight spectrum, which is the opposing spectrum to broaden and brighten and building. It's just got deficits. So I hope in this chapter, the people that read this get the message and they understand in my storytelling and my example that I am a happier, more successful, and productive human because I figured this out.